Hey everyone, Jerry the Gen X movie guy here, and it is time now for another box office roundup. This one for the weekend of April 24th through the 26th. All right, so this past weekend we saw the release of yet another event film here in 2026, really boosting the second quarter here. 2026 is really shaping up to be a great year at the box office. A couple of hits still hanging on, taking smaller than normal drops this weekend. It really was a great weekend at the box office. All right, so before I get into these numbers, I would like to ask you that if you'd like to show your love and support and become a super fan, I'd love to have you over on Patreon with me. Become one of my patrons, and you will receive a ton of rewards like exclusive, raw, uncensored videos. Every single video, just about every single video that I release, I will upload the uncensored version to my patrons. It's a patron exclusive. So you get all the profanity and all the cuts and all, everything before the cuts, the truly unedited raw form of my videos. So I'd love to have you over there. There are 3 tiers to choose from. The beginning tier is only $3 a month. And right now, if you do join my Patreon, you will receive a 7-day free trial membership, regardless of the tier that you choose, so that you can try out all the rewards, or most of the rewards anyways, absolutely risk-free. So go ahead and check that out. My link is going to be in the description, and I would really love to have you over there with me. So in first place, much to no one's surprise, I guess, would be the musical biopic Michael, which I actually saw last night, and I'm really excited. After I record this, I'll be doing the review for that, and I'll be uploading that here on my channel here in the next day or two. But Michael broke all kinds of box office records over the weekend, perhaps most notably becoming the biggest opening weekend for a musical biopic in motion picture history. Now, I'll be honest, this was one that early in the year I had kind of really underestimated. I guess I kind of bought into that whole behind the scenes drama, and I interpreted that as being a negative against this movie, while audiences definitely disagree. Now, that's not to say that the movie opened up with a huge positive response, because it did not. Even as of now, I believe it's sitting at a 38% Rotten Tomato score, but the audiences have absolutely loved it, giving it an A- cinema score. Now, over the weekend, Michael just came shy of hitting 100 million. However, as I'm recording this Tuesday morning, I can almost guarantee you that it's over 100 million at this point. But over the weekend, Michael brought in $97.2 million on a little bit less than 4,000 screens for a per screen average of a whopping $24,525. That is freaking amazing. What's even more amazing is that globally, the movie has already brought in over $200 million, $217.4 million to be exact, on a production budget, by the way, of 165 to 200 million, which is a pretty high production budget for an average movie. But given the opening weekend gross of this movie and the fact that I believe with this audience rating and that cinema score of an A-, I believe that Michael is going to have some pretty decent legs here at the box office. So I think that this movie will most assuredly be making a profit. As the movie says at the end, before it gets to the ending credits, it says his story continues. Well, given this huge box office opening weekend box office gross, I most definitely see the studio greenlighting the sequel after this weekend. It would not surprise me, by the way, if they got to work on that sequel almost immediately. Now, in second place, after spending 3 weeks at number 1, the Super Mario Galaxy movie ends up dropping 1 spot to number 2, but only a decrease from last weekend of 41.9% from last weekend, which is actually pretty decent, bringing in another $21.2 million dollars. Domestically, Super Mario has already made $386.5 million dollars. However, globally, it is sitting at $831.5 million dollars. Much like Michael, is actually doing better internationally than it is doing here domestically. So, will Super Mario Galaxy movie, this is really the big question surrounding this movie right now. Will Super Mario Galaxy movie end up breaking $1 billion dollars? I hate to say only sitting at when I'm talking about over 800 million, but since it is only at 831.5 billion dollars right now, I think it's going to be kind of a tough haul to get there. I'm not saying it won't happen though, because there is very, very little competition in the family movie realm for the next month and a half, really until June 15th, which is when Toy Story 5 gets released. Now, in third place is last week's number two, Project Hail Mary, which does drop one spot to number three this week, but brings in another $13.2 million dollars and a drop of only 35.6% from last week. The weekly drops on Project Hail Mary have truly been impressive. Now, domestically, Project Hail Mary has already brought in $305.4 million dollars, a very real possibility of hitting $400 million, I believe. Globally has hit $613.4 million dollars, so doing just about as well internationally as it is doing domestically. Then in fourth place, a movie that I would consider might be a minor disappointment for the studio, even though they may end up making money on this, and that is Lee Cronin's The Mummy, which drops one spot from last week from number three, is down to number four this week, brings in 5.6 million in its second week of release, but a 58.3% decrease from last week. Now, that's not really all that surprising, given that most horror films are very much front loaded into that first weekend. And The Mummy, which is definitely that genre horror film, uh, would be right around there. But yeah, there is so little competition out there as far as horror films go that I think if this movie was better reviewed and had gotten a better response from audiences than it has, I do believe that the Mummy's decrease this weekend would have been a little bit less, but a 58.3% decrease nonetheless, domestically bringing in $23.5 million dollars and globally bringing in $65.5 million dollars. So the Mummy is actually doing a little bit better internationally than it's doing domestically. And like I said, there might be a little bit of a minor disappointment there with the studio, but I do think at the end of the day, The Mummy is going to end up becoming profitable. All right, in fifth place and down one spot from last week is The Drama, which has actually been kind of a sleeper hit here in 2026, bringing in another $2.7 million dollars this weekend, 45.7% drop from last weekend, but domestically is sitting at $44.8 million dollars. Globally, already over $100 million dollars. So this movie is actually a hit with $101.8 million dollars, doing a little bit better internationally than it's doing here domestically. Then in sixth place is really the workhorse in our top 10, the one that has really done a lot of heavy lifting and has gotten very little credit for it. And that is the movie Hoppers, the Disney Pixar movie, which last week was at number six. This week is at number six. Has been hanging out near or in the top five since its release. Brings in another $1.9 million dollars this weekend, a 37.7% drop from last weekend, which is really impressive given that Super Mario is sitting up there at number two. Domestically, $164.2 million dollars right now, but globally, $370.2 million dollars. So Hoppers has really become a hit for Pixar and may not end up becoming one of the most memorable as time goes on. but I think that it's a movie that they will definitely be happy with, especially given, kind of what their last couple releases had done and the disappointments that came from those. Okay, in seventh place is where we find You, Me, and Tuscany. Kind of a disappointing release, this one. Last week was at number 5, drops 2 spots to number 7. $1.5 million over the weekend, a 61.5% second weekend drop. That is horrible. Domestically has only brought in $17.6 million. Then in eighth place, a debut, Over Your Dead Body, which I know that fellow YouTube critic Cody Leach has called his favorite film so far in 2026. Really excited to see it. It's a comedy with Jason Segel and Samara Weaving, and apparently he loved it. I'm sure I'm going to love it. This week in eighth place, $1.4 million, opened on a little bit over 1,500 screens, and a per screen average, however, of only $919. So Over Your Dead Body did not make a whole huge wave or anything at the box office this weekend, but if the critics are right about this one is one to catch. I'm really excited to see it as soon as I can. In ninth place, another movie that I am really interested in seeing, even though I know that the critical response has been not so hot for it, and that is the movie Mother Mary, which actually debuted last weekend, but moves up a whopping 13 spots. It was in 22nd last weekend, only played on 5 screens, however. So this weekend it has increased about 1,000 screens. It's somewhere over 1,000 screens. Brought in $1.3 million. It is a 645.8% increase over last weekend, but it should be with that kind of screen count addition happening. And domestically has only brought in $1.5 million. So it's pretty much made its entire gross right here. Then in 10th place, another debut, American Young Boy. This one brought in $1.2 million on 583 screens for a per screen average of 2048. All right, we had 4 movies added to the top 10 this week. So there are 4 movies dropping out of the top 10 from last week. And these are movies that are no longer on the charts. Either they've stopped tracking them or they've been pulled out of theaters. They include the movie Normal, BTS World Tour Arirang in Japan, the live viewing, which I'm assuming was just a one weekend engagement. Then you have a couple of other movies, Busboys and Booth Bangla. All 4 of those last week in the top 10. This week they are not. Okay, the total gross for this weekend is $150.8 million, which is actually up about 64%. It's 63.5% over last weekend, so quite an improvement. And when compared to the same weekend last year, the gross is up about 10 million over the same weekend last year. And that is last year is when Sinners was at number 1 in its second week. So, a pretty decent overage from last year. The other thing to look at is that not only did we have Michael this year making a ton of money, but Super Mario and Project Hail Mary were still holding their own. So I think the top 3 this year definitely, compared to last year overall, was a lot stronger. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at some recent release date changes and announcements, starting with a couple of announcements. First of all, Coyote versus Acme, which is I guess, a delayed animated movie. Kind of reminds me of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's kind of live action and animation. And it's a movie that I really thought could do quite well. And I've heard a lot of people online talking about, the chatter is that this movie is just going to go nowhere. It has received an August 28th release. And I just saw the trailer the other day, and I don't know, the people I've listened to online very well might be right, actually. So we'll see. But it does have a release date, the end of August, which, if it's a decent enough movie, is actually a pretty good release date for that kind of movie. Most definitely could become a hit with that release date. Then we have Jackass 5. Yeah, they've done it again. Another one, Jackass 5, being released June 26th. A couple of release date changes here. Scary Movie, the comedy from the Wayans brothers, a movie I am really super excited for. It has been bumped up a week from June 12th to June 5th now. Evil Dead Bird has actually been moved up a couple of weeks as well, from July 24th to July 10th. And another major release date announcement: Final Destination 7 has a May 12th, 2028 release date. So Bloodlines did so well, we just knew that there was going to be another Final Destination, and it now does have a May 2028 release date. So, of course, all of these, as some already have, are always subject to change. All of them are subject to change. Okay, let's look at the top 5 2026 movies domestically. So these are the movies, the top grossing movies of the year domestically here. And that is where in first place we have Super Mario Galaxy movie, now making $386.5 million. Project Hail Mary in second with $305.4 million. Hoppers in third with $164.2 million. And then in fourth and fifth, a couple of movies that I expect one to absolutely drop off by next week. The other one will soon be after that, and possibly will be off next week as well. But we have Avatar Fire and Ash in fourth place with $154 million, and Scream 7 in fifth place with $121.9 million. Now, worldwide, the top 5 so far this year, it's a little bit different. We have the Super Mario Galaxy movie in first place with $831.5 million. Then in second place, a movie that I don't believe has been released here. And if it has, it's been very limited. But overseas, internationally, it's been huge. And that's a movie called Pegasus 3, which right now is at $641.1 million. Project Hail Mary is in third, $613.4 million, trying to catch up to Pegasus. I would expect it to get there within the next couple of weeks, but we shall see. In fourth place is Hoppers with $370.2 million. And in fifth place, Wuthering Heights, which will not be in fifth place next week, I can guarantee you, sitting there with $241.7 million. Michael will at least hit fifth place worldwide next week. Has a very good possibility of taking over fourth place as well. So moving up in that box office gross. Now, opening here in this next week, a movie I am so fucking excited to see. One of my most anticipated movies of the year, as well as so many other gay men around the globe. And that is The Devil Wears Prada 2. Now, and this is the big question, will The Devil Wears Prada 2, which looks amazing, has incredible buzz, and will do really well next weekend? The question is, will it do good enough to beat Michael in its second weekend? Because Michael is almost guaranteed to bring in another 45 to $50 million next weekend. So the question really is, can Devil Wears Prada 2 get over $50 million in its opening gross? I tend not to think so. I think it's going to hit more along the lines of the 40 million mark. So if Michael takes a steep second week decrease at the box office, I guess that would make it possible, maybe even likely. But the first Prada only grossed 27 million. Now that was back in 2006. So in today's terms, that would be about 40 million. It could happen, but I do believe that Prada 2, in order to take first place, will have to get over a $50 million gross in its 3-day opening weekend. And by the way, if you haven't already, I'll get off here in a sec, but if you haven't already, be sure to catch, if you're looking forward to Prada 2 especially, be sure to catch the Lady Gaga Dolce video. It's called Runway. It just premiered yesterday, but it is one of the songs off of the Prada 2 soundtrack, which is stacked, but this is an original number, so who knows? Best original song in the future? Hey, Gaga already has a nomination, and Dolce would be an awesome nomination for Best Original Song. I think Prada 2 is going to be our next blockbuster heading in to the summer of 2026. So, box office looking really, really good so far this year. All right, so once again, if you've reached this part of the video and you haven't already done so, I would really appreciate it if you would go ahead and subscribe to my channel as well as like, share this video. I would really appreciate that as well. And let me know what you think about my video and the countdown, the movies in the countdown. Did you see Michael this weekend? What were your thoughts? How about any of these movies? What did you see recently? Talk to me. I'd love to hear it. But that is going to be it for this week's box office roundup. I look forward to coming back next week, discussing the numbers and taking a look at just how well Devil Wears Prada 2 does. I'm really excited. Once again, in case you didn't figure it out, I'm really excited for that movie. But anyways, until then, and until I see you again, that's a wrap.